Hi, my name is Phil Castle and I'm here today to discuss about my training philosophy and how it is incorporated with our technological advents. Um, and today we'll be discussing a couple of things. First, I want to kind of give a few examples of why we have to have technology involved in our training, particularly in the corporate world, which is an environment where I train in today. So I'm going to give you just a quick few examples of why we need, and one of my examples is going to be e-learning. E-learning, I think, is absolutely critical. It's in almost every business environment right now, and it's essential for time saving, to be succinct, for ease of training, and to target a large audience, and to be able to track that training. So I'm going to give you a few reasons why. As you can see here, I'm in my home doing this presentation. And the funny thing about being here in my home is that I still have access to almost everything I need to do my job right here at my house. Now, how am I doing this? What have we incorporated to allow me as a manager for training to be able to work from home? Well, I'm going to use my iPad here to show you uh, first a website called Monument, and this is where I approve or disapprove all the expenses of my consultant trainers that work for me. Now, I work I train on a software called Epic, and Epic is an electronic software that comprises a medical record. Well, I also have access to that software website where I can access my training for that website. I can actually access a playground where I can virtually log in and utilize a virtual system with fake patients, and I can practice my training. I can also go through lesson plans and incorporate them into the system right from this website right here, right from my own home. And obviously, as we communicate throughout the business world today, we do it a great deal by email. So, of course, I have access from anywhere with my Outlook account here at home on my iPad. So, these are three examples of technology within the workplace that we bring home and are able to use and make our lives a little easier. So what's my point about this? My point is you need training. You need training to be able to operate just those three systems, and there are many more that I have access to, but if we were to train for every single system in a classroom with an instructor, travel to go do that, it would be incredibly expensive for the corporation. It would be impractical, or organization, not just a corporation. It would be impractical, and it would be very, very costly. So we're going to discuss e-learning a little bit more, and I'm going to talk to you about my training philosophy and as well as Noel's learning principles incorporated with that. So here I was in Iraq. I'm a teacher here, and I was teaching the instructor trainer course to a bunch of trainers here in Iraq that were going to be teaching Iraqi soldiers how to teach their own soldiers. We're teaching them how to replicate training and how to develop a good training program. We carried forward all the same principles that we utilize in our Army and we utilize in. So as Noel said, adults need to know why they need to learn something. And as we see, you can tell that this group that I'm teaching here in Iraq, they knew why they were doing this. They knew why they needed this training. They needed to be qualified and certified as trainers in order to be allowed to teach the Iraqis, and a lot of them were very honored to do this type of instruction. So it was training that they understood the reasoning behind it. They understood that they needed to have these fundamental techniques in their pocket in order to be able to go forward and replicate this training with other people. So as you see here, we have some dummies. That this was actually in an Iraqi training facility, a medical training facility. My point of showing this slide here is that training has to be realistic as possible. You need as realistic implements as possible to keep adults interested. And adults are task oriented, as Noel said, task oriented. They must have a specific task they train to be able to complete. So I feel e-learning has to comply with the adult learning principles just as every other kind of training does. What I feel is very important about e-learning is that it must have a practical application. It must be task-oriented, as Noel said. A good example of e-learning, and it also ties into my next form of technological learning, and that is simulations, online simulations, and I just happen to have a kind of an example of both. And unfortunately, I can't go through a whole demo on this because it's proprietary and putting it out for public. But I can show you a little screenshot to give an example. So right here, this is a screenshot of a video, which is an e-learning on the Epic web page that goes through a patient demo on patient treatment in the electronic medical record. So it gives you a screenshot here of the electronic medical record, and as it plays, it goes through an e-learning about how to go through a patient encounter when a patient first walks in, is seen, treated, and then later discharged. So what's great about this e-learning is that it's immediately practical. In the test phase of this e-learning, you go through, you answer questions about it, and there's a pass-fail, which makes it relevant, makes you pay attention. But then what is really interesting and what's available right away is what's called a playground. There is a playground where you can, as the learner, you can go in, you can play with patients, you can actually treat a patient yourself. You assess the patient, you can give medications, and all of this, of course, is fake in a fake environment, not on real patients or real patient records, so no patient data is compromised. There are multiple assignments, and as you qualify for Epic, you've got to spend more and more time within this playground doing these simulations. And each simulation that you have to do is preceded by an e-learning, and or multiple e-learnings, and you must finish those e-learnings in order to do those. So in accordance with my training philosophy, I talk about a learning management system and how to incorporate this e-learning. How do we make it part of our training? How do we make it relevant? How do we get our employees to focus on it? I think we've all had to do e-learning before, and it doesn't matter whether you're in a school environment, a professional school environment, or whether you're in the corporate world. Everybody's had to do e-learning of some kind before. Even sometimes now, driver's licenses, or I just took a boating class that had e-learning in it, which amazes me, by the way. And we've all taken that course where the first thing we do is we look for the fastest way through it. Click, 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 click. How do I get through it? Click, 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 click. I just want to get through it. I don't really care what it says, because it's just this training that I have to take maybe every year. I think all hospitals, like where I work, they have training you have to take every year. For example, you have hazardous waste. I don't deal with hazardous waste. Why do I need to learn this stuff? I need to click, 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 click right through there. So what did that e-learning do for us? Nothing. It did nothing for the organization. It did nothing for the employee if we were able to click through the e-learning and not get anything out of it. So how do we incorporate it? How do we make it so that the employee actually gets something, or the student actually gets something out of the learning? Well, in accordance with my philosophies, we have to have hard stops. All right. So adults, we have very limited focus, very limited attention span, that we only want to learn what we want to learn or what we need to learn. So if I'm going to make it relevant for an adult or make an adult learn this material, I've got to design some hard stops in there. And I've got to design some forcing factors, something that's going to make that adult pay attention to that e-learning. So I've got always, I've got to put a test. And the test can't be super easy. It's got to be a little bit difficult, and it has to be a recycle test. So if I go through the training and I just guess at all the answers, and at the end it tells me everything that I did wrong and I can go back and fix them, an adult is going to just guess at those answers until he gets them all right, he or she gets them all right, and then complete the test and truly not learn anything. But if I know as an adult I'm going to have to repeat all the training and go back through it again if I fail the test, that's going to make me pay attention to the material, number one. Number two, if there's a follow-on simulation or exercise that I'm going to have to do and I have to complete that exercise properly, that will also make me pay attention to the e-learning and make me focus on it. If the e-learning is about a system that I have to use to work, for example, the 3 systems that I showed you here on my cool little iPad, because it's relevant, because it's task oriented, it's something that I have to focus on, then I also will pay attention to that e-learning. It's going to make me focus on it, and maybe I might even do the e-learning while I'm practicing, while I'm doing a simulation, while practicing my, say, monument, my expense reporting. Ironically, I did have to do an e-learning for that, and I did have to pay attention because it's not the easiest system to use. So that is worthwhile training. I never had to leave my desk. It was relevant, it was task oriented, and I knew why I needed to train on it. So the final piece of learning that I wanted to talk about in this presentation was simulation. And I'm going to stick to what I know, and particularly and I spoke about it a little bit when we were talking about the e-learning, and it flows right into the simulation. And this goes more than just the IT world, which I am involved in, obviously just the IT world, but it goes beyond that. In the medical world, we do simulations all the time on fake patients, and we've incorporated computer systems. We actually have now mannequins that are plugged up to a computer, and as a person does an intervention on that mannequin, for example, adds an IV fluid or intubates that mannequin, we can utilize that computer to upgrade the vital signs. For example, make the heart start beating a little bit better, make the breathing a little bit easier, and that fake patient will actually display those symptoms to the user. So that's more of a definitely a simulation there. I'm going to talk specifically about Epic and the medical record, the electronic medical record. And every person who is allowed to use Epic has to do simulation training. And we just think it's the best training out there because it's such a huge safety issue. If you document incorrectly or order the wrong type of medication, or perhaps don't document something that you should be documenting, Epic is a vehicle for that, and it really could cause harm if you don't know what you're doing. So we've created an environment with literally fake patients with real scenarios that challenge our users. They have to go in and they have to go through an entire treatment process, whether that be an inpatient or outpatient record. So doing those simulations in that environment and having to pass those simulations and having to complete that record properly is critical, and just totally completes the learning process. The next phase is actual patient treatment. So the next thing that they'll go into is they'll take that, it looks exactly the same, feels exactly the same, and they will treat a patient, and they'll go through that record just as they would have on their e-learning initially, and then their simulation. So for me, those are the 2 biggest pieces of technology that are of great use to us. All these things culminate in what makes them so great. Why not in the classroom? Why don't we bring them all together and everybody talk about it? It is so much cheaper. It is much more inexpensive. You can keep the employee or person at their desk to do this. It's faster, which all comes down to money in the corporate world. So the technological aspects of this, of course, there's cost associated with it, but we have a 9,000 person organization, and that cost is greatly diffused by the ease of being able to access this software from their desks or from their actual work environment. So I've been able to apply my training philosophy, and always I am utilizing Knowles's adult learning principles in my everyday life. I'm constantly designing training and constantly designing environments to train, and I mean virtual and real environments, build classrooms and things of that nature. So my philosophy is totally embedded with technological principles, and why this class is very applicable to what I do. So thank you very much for watching my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.